lap. She munched on the strawberries, absent-mindedly, surrounded by the books. Th entered the room silently. Wine was so immersed in her book that she didn't even notice his presence. Th gaze softened as her eyes sparkled with interest. She stuffed a few more strawberries in her mouth when her gaze landed on Th. She stared at him with doe eyes and quickly swallowed the strawberries. "Do you want something, sir?" she responded out of habit. "Sorry, Th." She scratched her neck awkwardly. He shoved his hands into his pockets and moved closer to her. "What are you doing?" His lips twitched. Wine felt as if she just saw him smiling, but the next second, she shrugged her thoughts. "Studying for test." He sat beside her, their shoulders almost touching. "Show me." Wine held her breath as he leaned to grab the book. She stared at his side profile. "What's it?" "It's the new material quantum mechanic." He sat straight and nodded. Wine bit her lips, staring at the bowl of strawberry. "He must be thinking I eat so much," she thought, and held the bowl up. "Wanna have some?" He glanced at the bowl in her hand and then at her. He nodded, fixing his gaze on the book, and took one. "Have you encountered any difficulties?" he asked coldly. She nodded. "Which part?" She reluctantly scooted closer to him, her shoulder tense as she reached over, but Th pretended not to notice. "This part about wave-particle duality is a bit confusing." He hummed in response and kept the book. "It's one of the abstract concepts. Think of it like this." He began to explain, his voice low and steady. Wine found herself not only listening to his words but also noticing the subtle way his eyes crinkled when he focused. She wondered if perhaps there was more to him than the cold exterior he presented. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "That makes more sense, thank you." He leaned back, observing her expressions. "I know your dedication to your studies. You're very bright." She blushed, looking down at the book. "Thank you," she murmured, feeling a glint of warm sensation through her chest, as this was the first time after a month of their wedding that Th interacted with her. "If you have any more questions, you can ask me," he said, and walked over to his desk. "Sure," she mumbled as he settled into his desk. Wine couldn't help but steal glances at him. And skip. Things hadn't changed much between Wine and Th. Wine buried herself in studies while Th was busy with his work. It's been 2 days since Th noticed Wine was skipping meals. The Wine was sitting in her room surrounded by books, but her thoughts went to the conversation of her classmates that she overheard. "Can't believe Wine actually married Professor Kim," she said with disdain. "Seriously, she's so fat. And he's a professor, for crying out loud. What does he see in her?" Another girl said, rolling her eyes. "Maybe it's an arranged marriage. No way he would choose her willingly." "Yeah, and I have seen them a few times. He barely talks to her. He must be regretting it." Wine's thoughts were interrupted by the knock on the door. "Ma'am, your cousin Lena is here." "Okay, I'll come. Until then, prepare some snacks." The maid nodded and walked out. Wine composed herself and walked to the living room where Lena was seated. She just hoped Lena wouldn't say something to make her feel inferior. "Hi Lena, how are you?" "Fine," she said arrogantly, eyeing her head to toe. Wine nodded and sat. They began talking about random stuff when the maid came with a tray of snacks. "Wine, you should really consider losing some weight," Lena said, sipping the juice. Wine pursed her lips. "It's not healthy, and you don't want people talking behind your back, do you?" Wine's stomach churned with a mix of anger and sadness. "I know, but I can't keep their mouths closed. After all, my relatives like you do the same. I'm fine with my body." Lena tightened her grasp around the glass. "Marrying someone like him, you have to look your best. People will expect that. He deserves someone who can match his looks, don't you think?" Wine felt a lump in her throat. "Th knows better what he deserves and what not. Stop lecturing me," she said and stood. "You can leave when you are done." Wine turned around to leave. "What is this, Wine? Is this how you treat guests?" Wine turned to her with a smile. "No. If the guests are like you, I'll make sure to treat them worse. But just because you are my aunt's daughter, I am sparing you. This is the last chance. Next time you speak mean words to me, I'll make sure to make you regret. She said and walked to the bedroom while Lena clenched her jaw. I'll see you, she yelled from behind and picked up her purse. While let out a sigh and plopped on the bed, staring at the ceiling blankly. The maid knocked and entered. Ma'am, she is gone. Good. Serve the dinner to him when he returns. I need some sleep. Don't wake me for dinner. Okay, ma'am. She walked out and closed the door behind her and closed her eyes. Tears streamed down her face. They must have been forced by his family. Why would he marry someone like me? She thought bitterly and sobbed, curling up. Mine didn't even realize and she went into deep slumber. They arrived home thinking to talk to Wine. Sir, should I bring you dinner? He looked around, but the house was unusually quiet. Where is Wine? Ma'am is asleep. He frowned as she is always up till this hour. Did she have dinner? No, she said not to disturb her. They nodded and made his way to the bedroom. He entered the room and saw her curled up on the bed. The sight of her peaceful face lingered, a feeling in his heart that he couldn't name. He walked to the bed and sat beside her, making sure not to wake her, and brushed the hair strands behind her ear. A frown appeared on his face, seeing tear stains on her cheek. What happened? Why did you cry? He mumbled inaudibly, tracing the back of his hand on her cheek gently. Spontaneously, Theo leaned in and placed a long kiss on her forehead. He pulled away and drew a deep breath. What are you doing to me? What is this feeling? He thought, staring at her face affectionately. Next morning, Wine woke up and glanced at the wall clock. It was 11 a.m. She was glad that today was the weekend and she didn't have to go to the university. She looked around the room, but there was no trace of him. Letting out a sigh, she made her way into the washroom. After freshening up, Wine took her books and kept them all on the bed, fixing her attention on them. After a few moments, the door opened, revealing Theo, followed by the maid with a tray of food. You're awake? He said, picking up her books and keeping them away. Place it here. He gestured for the maid. She kept the tray and walked out. Yes. Wine mumbled, confused by his intense gaze fixed on her. Eat it. I'll eat later. Theo raised his brows and sat in front of her. Do you think I'm a fool? I don't understand. You have been skipping meals and making excuses in front of me? He asked coldly. Why would I make excuses? She murmured, fidgeting her fingers and avoiding his gaze. He held her jaw and turned her to face him. Look at me when I talk to you. She nodded, pressing her lips together. Now stop lying when you don't even know how to lie. I know about the girls in the university and what Lena said. How do you know? She asked, surprised. I asked Clara about the university and the maid told me about Lena. He said gently, reaching out to take her hand. Tears welled up in her eyes. I just don't want people to pity you for having a wife who doesn't meet your standards. She whispered, her voice broke. I don't care about what people say or think. In my eyes, you are perfect. I never wanted a girl who would be more like a skeleton in the name of beauty standards. He squeezed her hand, his gaze held warmth and affection that Wine hadn't noticed before. Were you forced to marry me? She asked, the question that lingered in her mind for so long. Not at all, it was my choice. Were you forced? No, I guess. Everyone said I should be grateful that someone is ready to accept me this way, so I was fine with it. She sniffed, then pursed his lips. Ignore what others say. You're beautiful the way you are. You're not overweight, don't think about it again. I just hate the way people see me, she mumbled. Are those people important to you or me? He asked coldly. You're my husband, so it's obviously you. Then stop thinking about the people, will you? She nodded lightly. Do you think you need to lose some weight? I need a genuine answer. Wine hesitated before speaking. To be honest, I don't see myself as fat. I'm fine the way I am. He wiped her tears. Exactly, that's what matters the most. I mean it when I say you're beautiful, he said in a low tone. Do you? He nodded, patting her head. I do. She smiled widely. Let's eat. Everything might be cold by now. Wine stared at him with a soft smile playing on her lips. Time skip. Theo has been making an effort to be more present and more supportive. He usually takes Wine out for walks, to take her mind off things. They both feel a lot more comfortable around each other. Now 𝐿 ended a phone call and sat on the couch in the living room. Wayne came and sat beside him. Seems like you're quite busy. Don't wanna go for a walk? She leaned on the I'm too exhausted today. He passed her a questioning gaze. I'm working on a really exciting research project. What's it about? It's about the application of quantum entanglement in secure communication systems. The idea is to create a communication network that's completely secure from any form of eavesdropping by using tangled particles. Her eyes sparkled with enthusiasm as she began to explain, and leaned back, his gaze never leaving her face. That's impressive, he said with admiration as she completed. In a rare display of warmth, he wrapped his arm around her and pulled her closer. I'm proud of you, Wayne. Your dedication and passion are remarkable. Wayne's face flushed red. Thank you, she said with a smile. You can tell me if you need any help with it. She nodded, snuggling close to him. I see our kids will be bookworms. They've got a father who is a professor and a mother who loves nothing more than books. Wayne chuckled, feeling a wave of happiness. I never thought someday I would get married to my professor, she said in a low tone. Kevin tightened his grip around her. Same here. When I got to know about you, I was fine, as I have always seen you as a quiet and obedient student. She hummed a response. I always thought you were forced into this marriage. I wasn't. He kissed her hair. Few days later, they arrived home late at night when he heard clattering and clicking sound from the kitchen. With a frown, he made his way to the kitchen where Wayne was. Wayne, what are you doing here? Aren't you asleep? He asked, causing her to flinch. You scared me, she said, shaking her head and moved closer to him. I have something for you, she said with a smile and held his hand. He raised his brows as she escorted him to the dining room. What is this? He asked with surprise. Happy birthday, Theo. I made dinner and baked a cake for you, she said nervously. You did all this for me, she nodded. Theo embraced her in a tight hug. Thank you. You have done so much for me. I wanted to do something special for you, but this is what came into my mind, she said shyly. Theo pulled out and pecked her lips. This means a lot to me. He held her close. Let's cut the cake. He nodded as Wayne handed him the knife. Make a wish. He closed his eyes before blowing out the candle. He cut a slice of cake, offering her the first bite. It's your birthday, you should have it first. She showed it in his mouth and anxiously watched his expression. This is delicious. Wayne's heart swelled with happiness. I'm glad you like it. This is the bestest birthday I have ever had. He cupped her face, Wayne smiled, holding his hands. You deserve it, she whispered. I love you, he whispered and captured her lips. Wayne smiled between the kiss and gave away herself.